What's happening, everybody? Willie here at the Great Outdoors. Happy 23rd of December to you. 23rd of December. Where does the Christmases go? The ghost of Christmas past is just wandering up and down the streets everywhere these days. Time just goes by so fast. Sometimes not fast enough, like when I'm doing one of these videos. So let me get you right into what we're talking about today. If you have looked at the thumbnail and you could actually see it and it wasn't that big, you would know why we're here. Why are we here today? That guy right there. Go ahead, get that gasp in. The Johnson Commander 150, that's right. The reel that was made just before the sale of Johnson to Johnson Wax. To be compared to today, to the 150A that came into play just after the sale of Johnson to Johnson Wax. We're going to look at these two reels today because they only made a 150 and a 150A. That's it. That's all they made. Let's take a look at the differences before the sale and after the sale and see, what did they change, if anything. Trust me, there were some changes. I'm going to get you down to the table here and we're going to get a little close and personal with these 150s. All right. Let's try to find a good spot here. All right, so let's take a good look at these two guys and let's try to figure out, let's visually just assess the differences between the 150 and the 150A. Now, let's go with 150 first. What do we see different here? One, see that decal? The titling difference, what we got here. Johnson is kind of in an off tannish yellow with the Commander right there in black inside the yellow banner, and 150 kind of in a tannish yellow inside the green with model 150 at the bottom. That's a little bit of overkill if you ask me. You got 150 and then you have model 150. You're kind of stating the same thing there maybe. But that's still cool. It's still all right. I have no problem with that. But you do have Made in USA down there in the bottom in green, which is very hard to see. It is very hard to see, but it is there. Made in USA down there at the bottom. Now let's take a look at the 150A and see what they did on that. Now what I'm seeing, of course, is extremely easy to see at this point. You got Johnson in chrome, like a silver kind of a chrome thing going on. Made in USA is in white, a lot easier to see. 150A in red. A little harder to see, but yet very cool. Commander in white, then you got some stripes and cool stuff going on. Now, what I really do like is right there, you have the silver Johnson logo, the crown with the shield kind of thing happening there. That's pretty darn neat. I kind of like that. I'm hoping I can move it around where you can see it. So anyway, there is your titling differences, your decal. Let's go right to the buttons here because really, shape, physical characteristics of the button, there is no difference there. Got your AccuCast at the top, and then you have your targets, your bullseyes. Now, this one is in a tannish yellow. Now, did it change through the years and just age? I don't know. Did it used to be white like the 150? I don't know. That would be something I'd have to ask a couple of other people, but there are differences in color there. But the button itself is pretty much all the same. Now, since I've got it angled up this way, let's take a look at the crank arms. Okay, crank arm definitely got a beefier crank arm here on the 150A. And you have the thinner, older style with the 150 with that hourglass kind of handle there. Which, the hourglass handle, you do have a tendency, if you get a little fish slime on your hands, that becomes pretty slick, a little bit harder to hold on to. I've noticed that with several of my other Centuries and Citations. If you get wet or a little bit slick, sometimes that'll fly out of your hand when you go to retrieving kind of quick. You still have your same, pretty much identical there. I don't see any difference in that in your drag knob there. Still with the little red police car popcorn bubble gum light nut there, which is really cool. I've always liked those things. They're pretty neat. Now, again, with the difference in the crank arm thickness here, my guess is going to be that you're going to have a different gear or crankshaft inside the 150A because it's longer. You notice how much thicker that is right there. So I think if you're buying parts, you call Gary up and say, hey Gary, I've got a 150A or a 150. You better be clear about that because there's a good possibility, I would say, that gear is probably got a longer crankshaft thing going on here on the 150A. Now, since I've got this thing held up in this direction, if you notice the bottom here, we have some white plastic that you don't have on the 150. On the 150A, you got the button lock. For those of you who like to set the hook like you're trying to catch a marlin, you got that button lock. You can slide it into place. Now, I've never used it. It's just something I don't think I've ever used. I've talked to Dan and Gary both, and I don't know that they've ever actually used one. So if you're setting hooks that, you know, on a pretty big scale, then you may want to skip the 150 and go to the 150A. That's all I can tell you. It's really just plastic sliding on plastic. So I would not be myself personally, I wouldn't be using it. I would be okay with that one. I wouldn't have a problem there. Handle, let's just go to that real quick. Square it off with the ridges there for the being able to grip with your index finger and your thumb. So you're a little bit different there, so you're not really sliding off like you do with the old one there. As far as the outside characteristics, they're all, after that, you're pretty much the same. It's the same frame. You got the same cap with your slotted top and the silver racing stripe, which I think is really cool. I've always kind of liked that. Then you got your beefier line guides there on both of them. That's the same, which we're going to get to the inside here in just a moment, take a look at that, and just kind of show you what that actually does, what the AccuCast, and that is part of the AccuCast, what they have in common there. Making sure not to confuse them with each other. Obviously, to get them apart, the cap comes off, and then you can just wiggle it a little bit, and your rear plastic cap will come off. Let's set that there. Set that, stay, and we'll take this one off here. Set that over there. Let's take a look at the inside here. Okay, again, a visual shows me that, what do we have different in here? We have a spring difference. Thicker, more gap in between on the 150. You notice the spring there. And then you have a thinner, tighter coil there on the 150A. Looks like the gear is the same. Looks like the shaft is the same. Looks like the crank gear. It looks like everything else is the same. I don't see any difference here. Now what I am seeing on the bottom of the frame, you see this little smiley face. A little U-shaped smiley face there. Tells me that these frames, I must have done a couple of other reels. My guess would be like the 710 or something like that, where you would have had that stability, a little leaning tower of Pisa in there that would have been screwed into the smiley face. It's on both of them there. They've been screwed in there, and it would have slipped down just like on the 130-A, the big green one. But that is okay. I see a difference in the anti-reverse here. Your anti-reverse on the 150A, there's a bit of a gap there. You notice, see how big that gap is in between each one there? Where the line or the crank will actually lock into place. And if you take a good look, and I'm really, really hoping you can see all this stuff, look how tight that one is. You have a lot more teeth going on there. If you can see that. I'm hoping you can, but there's a lot more teeth going on that. So there's that difference. Let's go to the top here. This is basically your AccuCast. If you notice, it's really the same. You got a single. Where are you at? You're single. This is why you're single. You're hiding too much. There you are. Right there. Retrieval pin or pickup pin, whichever you decide to call it. You have one on each. It is a single. But you have the nut on the top here that holds on, obviously is larger, Why is that, you may ask yourself? Well, that is part of the AccuCast. You notice on the inside there, that nut is going to trap that line up inside there. And it's going to slow it down and make it go through that guide, I guess, slower. I guess that's the only way I can put that. I do notice that the nut is different. This one, you have a beveled nut on the 150, a not so beveled, more aluminum looking nut on the 150A. Now myself, I was looking at this thing and I'm kind of going, if that pinches that line in there like that, would that put a cut in the line? I mean, like this one is definitely beveled, but it's a little sharper on the inside edge, where this one is not. I don't know. I mean, I don't know about that. I'm not quite sure how that would affect. Would it put a weak spot in your line where you know, get a big fish, you might accidentally get the line cut? I don't know. I don't know. Were these reels, you know, a big thing back in the time? I don't know. Did people want them and have to have them? Again, I don't know. Let me get back here. You're definitely going to have a length difference here on the crankshaft because of that thicker arm. So that definitely looks like something they've changed. Everything else looks identical. From what I can see, everything else, no, wait a minute. Okay, the arm, I'm noticing that now. The arm for the anti-reverse is different on the 150A than the 150. Notice it's got a little bit of an indentation there. I guess it was designed more for that particular gear setup for the anti-reverse. Okay, so just like normal, that nut comes off, and that is aluminum right there. I can tell that. That is aluminum. That looks like that's trying to weasel its way off of there. I need to put that back on there. Definitely have a chrome or more steel nut on the 150. Look at that. It's actually still got the sticker. DuPont Stren. I don't know if you can see that. DuPont Stren 6-pound. That's pretty neat. Pretty much identical. Nothing different there on the rotors. Looks like we still have our, now this looks like a brass center section. That looks copper. Yep, pretty much the same there, other than the fact that that's a brass. This is brass, this is copper. There we go, you just have that brass pin. Spool comes right out. Oh, and it's not a full, okay, it's not full. It screws into the body, if you notice right there. That just screws right into the body. That is made to the body. We have a solid green, really nice spool. And that's the same way, except this one looks to be copper to me. It's more of a bronzy color, bronze metal. And you still have your green spool with your little indentation at the bottom because it locks into place inside the body there. So here we are with them all back together again. Just a very cool scenario here to look to really just soak it in, bring it into the big brain and think about that. This was designed before the sale, the first original sale of the Johnson Reel Company to Johnson Wax. And this came out just after the sale. You know, talking 1969, 1970 in there, that jump. To me, that's cool. Sitting here holding these in my hands, you know, you're going, wow. It's very cool to me. This is something that means a lot to me. It's very deep to me, and I enjoy this type of thing. You know, talking about the Johnson Reel Company, let's set these down just a second, and let's just finish off our history real quick here. When you jump through the 70s and go into the 80s, this is when some extremely drastic changes came into play. The metal bodies and those types of things were gone. The weight, the heavy weight of the metal bodies and things like that, it opened the door for graphite. That's when reels like the 225, the Tangle Free, the Crappie Pro, those reels, you know, came into play. And in my personal opinion, that was a major downfall, but a lot of people were doing it. There was a lot of people doing it. Zebco with their 33s and with their UL3s and UL4s, the smaller micro stuff, had switched up to graphite. Was graphite a terrible idea? I don't know if it was a terrible idea, but I just think that the design of some of those reels, like the Tangle Free, the Country Mile, things like that, they were weak. They would flex. I could actually feel when I was retrieving or catching a fish, you could feel the reel flexing on the graphite foot. So, you know, there was where my problem was with it. So at that point, it was bye-bye metal, hello graphite. So at this point, I think we jump up into the 90s where you're getting into, let's just say 1997, okay, for example. We go all the way up to 1997. From 1997 to that point past, where the company really just kind of faded away and went out of business, all the reels had been made in China. They just, no more made in the U.S., not since the 100B 40th anniversary, which again, being made in the U.S., all metal, just like the original 100B. That was an expensive reel to make. So from that point after, no reels were made in the U.S. And it's sad, you know, it happens. These businesses, these kind of things happen. But here's a fun fact, something that you might not have known. If you're familiar with these guys, this is a 170 Abumatic made by Abu Garcia. Well, Abu Garcia now owns the rights to the Johnson Century. Maybe I can get on the phone, get on the computer, get on the interwebs, send a pigeon with a note wrapped to his leg, something like that. Send it out to Abu Garcia and see if they won't maybe at some point in time decide to make a limited edition of the old Johnson Century 100B. I think that'd be extremely cool. But you know, a good one, not a, you know what I'm saying? You down with what I'm speaking? Like the 40th anniversary. Let's go that route. But let's see Abu Garcia's version. Maybe some brass gears. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this little history lesson. I hope you guys have enjoyed seeing these two reels. The beginning of the end. Or the beginning of the end. Or the end in the beginning of... Anyway, when... You understand what I'm saying? Are you getting what is any of that clicking? This is very cool to me. Hope you guys enjoyed this. We'll see you guys on the next one. Whatever the next one may be. Remember to take notes though. The beginning of 2025, there'll be a quiz. Hope you get it right. Because if you don't, then no fishing for you. You have to go get a Zebco 33 and go fishing. And I don't mean an old one. I'm talking about these new ones. These ones that are all plastic. You have to buy the common.